Hey, welcome to this Windows channel, and as we continue exploring propagation and its effect on shortwave, we are now at a point where we're going to check a little bit more in details the different international broadcast bands and their propagation characteristics. So, I've talked about different modes, different things that can happen with propagation, unusual phenomena like sporadic e-skip or the effects of aurora on and geomagnetic storms on propagation. I'll be posting the link to this page in the description below the video. This is for newbies a very interesting little list. It is the international shortwave bands and frequencies. These are for international broadcasters. So it means, all the stations that you want to listen to, like Radio Romania and Radio France and China Radio and so on, use these bands. This list is interesting because what's uh, good about it is it has okay explanation, good explanation of when or not a band could be open. And remember that even if a band is, says only nighttime or only daytime, it's worth it to take a listen out of these boundaries. Shortwave isn't cut, into stone. It's flexible media and propagation changes all the time. So here you've got the different international broadcast bands. My take, 11 meters, the 2567 to 26.100. It's not really used anymore by any international broadcasters. Yet there are some interesting things to listen there. So, take a listen, and there's even some FM repeaters from some TV and radio stations. That's interesting. But it's not used anymore. It was used in the 80s. A few stations would use it. I remember listening to Radio RSA in South Africa, for example. But today it's not used anymore. This is mostly a daytime band, but with, of course, the possibility of interesting listening when there's sporadic e-skip, for example, in the evening. 13-meter band, as they say here, somewhat shaky day reception, very little night, similar case to 11 meters. But long distance daytime broadcasting keeps this band humming in the Asia Pacific region. This band is used a little bit. It's not used a lot, but there are some international broadcasters that use it. It is mostly a daytime band, but you know what? Um, After sunset, before sunrise, could be interesting to have a listen, as there could be some stations. Depending on the season, it is different. In winter, there's probably not going to be anything at night in this band, but in the summer it's surprising. I remember one of the stations I would listen to very often on the 13-meter band in the summertime would be Radio Australia on 21740, which was coming in quite well on that 13-meter band frequency, even 2 hours, 3 hours after sunset. So it could be worth a listen at night in the summer, but in the wintertime it probably dies pretty much as the sun sets. The 15-meter band of 18.900 to 19.020 is pretty much abandoned now. It was used a little bit in the past few years by some broadcasters that finally found out that maybe it wasn't a good idea to use this frequency range. I remember Radio Australia using 19,000. I've heard them a few times there. But less and less stations are using this band now. Mostly because also a lot of new radios come out and don't even have that band in their frequency coverage. So one of the things they want to do about this band, by the way, is maybe convert it to a DRM band. We'll see what happens with that. 16 meters, one of the used. It's pretty used. There's a lot of stations that use this 16-meter band at different times of day. That's the 17480 to 17900, and as they say here, day reception good, night reception varies seasonally, with summer being the best. So that's what I like about this description, is here it describes really well when a band can be used. So, and to give you an idea about this, in the wintertime, After sunset, probably the band dies pretty much. But in the summertime, starting with spring into summer and fall, I get, Radio Australia 17840 many hours after sunset. So it's good to have a listen to this band even after sunset, especially if you're in the summertime. Then we have 19 meters, which is one of the most used bands, 15000 to 15825. Day reception good, 9 reception variable, best during summer. Once again, pretty much what is interesting here. Time stations such as WWV are clustered around 15 megahertz. So basically, this is a very, very much used band. Is one of the most used bands on shortwave. For long distance, it is a good band. And daytime is usually good, and even into nighttime, even in the winter time, I've noticed that lately, even for example, an hour and a half after sunset, I could hear Cuba on 15230, for example. So, listen at pretty much any time of day and night, but of course, you'll have more reception at night, starting with spring into summer. So, if you are in the summertime, even if it's midnight, take a listen to the 19 meter band. Pretty surprising what you can hear. Then you've got 22 meters, which is 13570 to 13870. And it's similar to 19 meters, but it does have a little tendency to work around the clock, a little bit like 25 meters. So, any time of day and night, take a listen. Check out what's on the bands. It's surprising what you can hear on that band. 25 meters, 11500 to 12050, but it extends a little more than that. Generally best during summer, said to be ideal during the period before and after sunset, and that is very true. 25 meter band is one of those bands that actually really works well with what we call the gray line DXing. So 2 hours before to 2 hours after sunset, it's kind of a peak usage. It's that time where you'll hear the most stations on the band. But it's one of those bands that's generally accepted as a 24-hour band with, of course, some periods with a little less activity, some with more. But I would call the 25 meter band a 24-hour band where you can listen to a lot of stuff pretty much any time of the day. So, have a listen. It could be very surprising. 31 meters, one of the very, very used international broadcast bands, especially in the summer. 9250 to 9995. As it says here, good year-round night band, seasonal during the day, with best reception in winter. Time stations clustered around 10 megahertz, like WWV. This band is in the winter time almost a 24-hour band. I mean, even in mid-afternoon here in the winter, I can hear European stations. So if you don't have too much noise, it's in the winter time, it's close to a 24-hour band, usually a little weaker at night. But in the summertime, it clearly is more of a night band from about an hour or two before sunset, and all night long you'll hear stations in the 31 meter band in the summertime. So depending on the season you are in, take a listen. Like I said, pretty much 24 hours in winter, but mostly nighttime in the summer. 41 meter band. This is a little wrong here because this is an old allocation. It says here 7100 to 7350. It's more like the real band now is 7200 to 75, let's say 7600. So 7100 to 7600, make it really larger than this. Varies by region. This band is not used by everybody. For example, North American stations need to be out of the amateur radio band. They're not allowed to use the 7200 and to 7300 portion of the band. In the 71 to 7300, it's a mixed bag because it's mixed with amateur radio stations. So sometimes causes interference. This is mostly a nighttime band. You'll hear pretty good night reception from an hour or two before sunset up to an hour or two after sunrise. And you'll have a bit of daytime reception for local stations. For example, here there could be some transmissions from WBCQ on 7490 that will be heard here, but more locally when it's daytime. 49-meter band, probably the most used shortwave international broadcast bands of all. 5900 to 6300. A little bigger than that, you can go from 850, 800 to 6400. It's a good year-round band. Nighttime is great. Daytime reception, very local. So, for example, I'll hear very local here from Montreal, maybe Toronto, CFRX 6070 in the daytime, or CKZN from St. John's, Newfoundland. But apart from that, this is mostly a nighttime band, sunset to sunrise. Path of propagation is darkness for that band. 60 meters is the tropical band, 4750 to 5100. This one is not used a lot. It is often plagued by a lot of interference because of the low frequency, but it's worth listening. It's interesting what you can hear, and this is mostly nighttime. Often a little better in the winter than in the summer. In Europe, you guys have 3900 to 4050. This is used mostly in Europe. In the United States and North America, we're not allowed to use this frequency range. It is mostly a amateur radio range. Mostly nighttime for most people here on this band, or very local reception if it is daytime. As for the other bands, 3200, 3400, a little bit of stations there. It could be worth taking a listen. Mostly nighttime, so don't try to listen in daytime. There won't be much there. And finally, 120 meters is one of those bands where there's not a lot of things to listen to for a lot of people. Here in North America, there's not a lot of stations that can be heard here unless you have very low noise. In Asia, it is used a little bit. I know that in Australia also, but it's one of those bands where you won't hear a lot of stuff. And this is really nighttime only. So I'll leave the link, even though this allocation is a little old. You can, look at it if you want to know what time of day or night to listen to a frequency range on shortwave. If you have any comments, questions, why not ask away? If you like our videos, why not subscribe and also give us thumbs up. Helps us on YouTube. Thank you for watching.